Can you all hear me now? Fine. Bless you. I'll start by going down the stairs and coming back up again and doing it all spontaneously. What I said was, for those of you who didn't hear it, you did down here, that following the kind of introduction that I was generously given there, I sometimes wonder who I actually am. But you'll find out in the next sort of 15, 20 minutes. Secondly, I said, hey, audience, in the light of the, I thought, outstanding speech that Kevin has just given, you've got to perform somewhat better than you have, insofar as he provoked a lot of discussion there, but you left Ethne to ask most of the questions. Now, you'll understand that amongst the speakers you've got here today, I'm the one who knows least about what you do. I'm therefore going to start off by saying a word that has frequently been used today is downturn. I don't see a downturn, ladies and gentlemen. I see a new reality. The problem with you using the term downturn is that there is an inference in the word downturn of cycle. Cycle is where you've been. There is no evidence whatsoever to suggest that that cycle will continue. I'm therefore going to base my remarks today upon the notion that wherever the oil price is today is actually a new reality, and that's what we're going to have to deal with. Now, he's not here to defend the remark I'm about to pass, but predominantly, Kevin's speech was from the inside out. That is to say, what must we do in these circumstances? My speech, my talk, is much more about how in tune are we as a paradigm, as a marketplace, with what brought this situation about. I gather that at earlier conferences, David, you actually entertained the idea of having economists speak to you. How dare you? How dare you? Economists, ladies and gentlemen, and I speak as one who's well past his sell-by date, in my view, about the least relevant members of society. Wait! Come on! Why are they least relevant? Because they spend all of their time looking at screens. And you know what? There's very little evidence to show that looking at screens is going to be capable of telling you much more of what has happened rather than what is going to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, we have witnessed in the last 2 decades some of the worst examples of, get ready for this, linear, extrapolative thinking coming off the screens of economists. Now, as if that weren't bad enough, we've swallowed it. Hook, line, and sinker. We've swallowed it. I come from the United Kingdom. That is a bit of a surprise to some of you because of the way I speak. I come from the United Kingdom, and during the so-called recession, frequently we heard things such as, we're going to go into double-dip recession. We didn't. For the last 5 years, we've heard speculation around what is going to happen to interest rates. Irrelevant. Interest rates in the United Kingdom are not independent of interest rates anywhere else. And we weren't going to put up our interest rates, hence creating all manner of financial distortions if the rest of the world wasn't going to either lead us or follow suit. That brings me somewhat neatly to the fact, sorry folks, you're not in a downturn. I'm now going to sidetrack just briefly. I was at a World Energy Conference in Calgary not that long ago, again the outsider looking in, and I said to that same audience, would you please tell me what is going on around us that represents a truly tectonic shift in world politics. That audience came up with a load of old rubbish as an answer. The tectonic shift, ladies and gentlemen, is that which is causing you to describe the situation you're in as a downturn. The tectonic shift, ladies and gentlemen, from my opinion, is the following. The United States has ceased to want to be the world's policeman, is sick and tired of depending upon its energy resources coming from somewhere else, and therefore has turned its attention on itself. Fracking has made that possible. That ain't going away. Is the world short of hydrocarbons? No. Because geniuses like you keep on finding ways to exploit that which we have got, which previously were regarded as irrecoverable. You then say to yourself, well, in the world economy, what is happening out there? Remember, I'm talking from the outside in, that Kevin didn't refer to. We've seen a slowdown in China. Excuse me? From over 7% to 6.9%. Those kind of heady days are things that the rest of us have never understood. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what we're seeing is poor leadership. We're seeing poor leadership in a global political context, and we're seeing poor leadership in the governance of companies. And frequently, very interesting, Kevin's talking about a 1,000-day business plan. Excuse me, for those of you in this room who are the victims or employees, which is another word, of corporate life, your CEO is actually on a 45-day horizon maximum, because he's trying to deliver what he offered the market 45 days ago, and he's getting ready to tell the market what he's going to tell them when my quarterly review comes up. 1,000 days, therefore, Kevin, sorry, is all about small, medium enterprises. It isn't about corporate life. And there was a very interesting quotation, and forgive me, I'm going to read this. Somebody's nicked it. Where did that go? Did you take it? No, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I may get his name wrong. Chairman of BP is called Svanberg, right? He described himself recently, bless you, he described himself recently, along with Shell, as being, thank you, as being the Michelin star restaurant of the oil and gas business. And he then had the insensitivity to describe the rest of us as hot dog vendors. Now, come on, folks. Are you hot dog vendors? It struck me under the circumstances that if things are as bad as sometimes you behave as if they are, that might not be a bad diversification policy. Because we've all got to eat as well as keep warm. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are now witnessing some of the worst examples of leadership in the post-war, post-Second World War era. That applies to politics, and it happens to business too. The fear that has been expressed in this meeting is all about the way in which costs are cut. And I'm going to put to you that the laziest, least apt move to address your cost base is by getting rid of people. That is an advertisement to the talent pipeline upon which we all depend in business, right? Says, don't come here, not worth coming into this business, because if I join now, I'm last in, I'll be first out. Completely and utterly the wrong way to go about it. Why does that happen, however? I'll tell you. The management consulting firm Booz Allen, in I think about 2003, carried out a global survey. And that global survey resulted in something massively simple. And it said, there are only two types of chief executive officer. It didn't say there are two equal pools, it said there are two types. And ladies and gentlemen, take this home with you. Cutters and growers. cutters and growers. Now, if you then look, and you can look at your newspaper, you look at your own companies, and you ask yourself whether you're being led by a cutter or a grower. Mathematically, ladies and gentlemen, you're being led by a cutter. Frequently, the route into becoming CEO of a corporate is not engineering, it's not marketing, it's finance. As a general rule, the finance function is the least people-sensitive part of the culture within the business. They look at the sums, they look at the screens. They're not ballsy. That's a technical term. They're not ballsy. They're not brave. And I've been asked in every country of the world, well, very nearly every country of the world, what I think is the most important quality of a chief executive officer, and it is simply that. They need to be brave. And we are not being led, ladies and gentlemen, in any case, by brave people. So we're working to short-term horizons. We're taking the easy step of cutting people rather than looking at our cost base more forensically than that. And we're afraid of telling the marketplaces that I'm on a longer-term strategy. Judge me now if you will, but I'll come right in the end. Isn't it interesting, I thought last night, that two of the world's great natural resources companies, Glencore, Anglo-American, are selling assets? Isn't it interesting that BP has had to sell assets because of the difficulty it got into in the Gulf? Is now an environment where we should be selling assets? I'd like to know who's going to buy them, because they're going to buy them cheap. So Glassenberg at Glencore bought them up here and is selling them down there. Now, it's all very well and good me standing here and saying cutting people is the cheapest and quickest way to go about looking at your cost base. And I'm saying that because, and I've got an involvement here, so I'm slightly conflicted, but I'm unabashed. I'm the chairman, shareholder, and co-founder of a business which is using some extraordinarily clever, I don't understand it at all, algorithmic techniques to analyze a company's cost base. Interestingly, ladies and gentlemen, amongst some of the biggest companies in the world with people cost bases running up to £10 billion, we are showing that we can save between 7 and 10% of their employee costs without getting rid of anybody. What a crude device, therefore, it is to say we've got to cut so many heads. I have a client, and I'm not ashamed to say this in front of you, but I'm not going to identify them precisely, in the FTSE 10 at home, who are sitting on literally tens of billions of cash. They announced their results last week, all of which are on plan, and they've just implemented a total hiring freeze and redundancies of 250 people. How crass, Mr. Client of mine, can you be? Was that the right way to go about it? You all know this company, by the way. I'm just not going to tell you who they are, and I'd rather you didn't work it out. You've therefore got to ask yourself, how thoughtful are we going to be in managing our cost base going forward? And what is actually happening there on the outside? Let me give you some data. 70% of China's energy is created from coal. I happen to be an advisor to a company that is now working on extracting clean CO2 from coal tips. That's interesting, isn't it? So if you were China, which horse would you be backing? Oil and gas or coal? Look out of the window, ladies and gentlemen, not at the screen. We've just seen sanctions removed in part from Iraq. What's therefore capable of happening to supply? Why is oil at $50 a barrel? This, ladies and gentlemen, is crudely the United States versus Saudi Arabia. It isn't downturn. It's a new political reality. And ISIS, the Middle East situation, we're standing on the fringes of it now, is a dynamic which is causing the United States, erstwhile the biggest energy importer on the planet, notwithstanding it was a producer, right, to take a different view in the world. Look at the current campaigners. What a laugh that is, to become president, the next president of the United States. This is what we ought to be looking at, ladies and gentlemen, not the output from that bunch of muppets called economists who are telling you where it's been, where it is, and where it's going to go. So what are we talking about here? I'm not opposing anything that Kevin has said. I'm challenging you, every last one of you, to get back into your offices and look out of the window, not look at the screen. Think your way through. Look at your talent. Are you doing what Kevin said, which is freeing them up? Are you making your businesses look attractive to these dewy-eyed, optimistic kids coming out of college and university, not just from your own territory, but from all over the world, who want to make a difference? And remember one thing. Do you know what happens when you start cutting your labor force? The best people leave. The best people leave and go and work for somebody who's more inspired than you are. You're left, therefore, with your second-raters and your third-raters. Who are the people who leave last? The people who don't leave at all. The third-raters. Now, all you've got in your paradigm is intellectual property. That's all you are. That's all you do. That's your competitive edge. Therefore, if your competitive edge is blunted by you making crass decisions on cutting your people, the best people will go somewhere else. I was in Zurich the other day, folks, with Althea Brown-Bovary, ABB. They have got an order book, ladies and gentlemen, of 35 billion pounds. To fuel that, they need to hire 55,000 engineers. Excuse me? Is this a place for depression? Is this a situation of downturn, hunker down, be afraid? No, it's not. It's get out there and get at them. But stop looking at the computer screen. Stop listening to the gratuitous opinion of journalists, all of whom are there to sell a story rather than actually, and in many cases, to be the story. That's the challenge that you all face. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.